recording.
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, 4:30 on the dot. Okay, welcome everyone. Just real quickly, just want to call to order the meeting of the License Commission for the City of Gardner at 4:30 on Tuesday, July 19th. Quick announcement. Any person may make a video or an audio recording of an open session of a meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium subject to reasonable requirements of the chair as to the number, placement, and operation of equipment. U.S. is not to interfere with the conduct of the meeting. Any person intending to make such a recording shall notify the chair forthwith. All documents referenced or used during the meeting must be submitted in duplicate to the clerk. All documents shall become part of the official record of the meeting. The commission consists of 3 members. A quorum of 2 members is needed for a motion. The ruling for Section 14, which is a 1-day license, lie with the local commission. Local rulings on violations can be appealed to the ABCC within 5 days of receiving a written decision. And just when approaching the commission, please state your full name for the record and sign the sign-in sheet down in front here. And real quickly, our agenda for this evening is as follows. We'll start off with the approval of the June 14th, 2022 meeting minutes. Good. A note or a response?
Yeah. So. Stop.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He said it's fine, we just had a question here from the... That was already sent. Okay, any questions, comments, or concerns for the meeting minutes for June 14th?
No.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Minutes have been approved. And over to her. Okay. So new business, we have the price chopper application for multiple amendments. This was something that was on our agenda in June and we had approved. And just real quickly, if you want to just review that real quick. Just
The ABCC came back and said that they had needed to do an advertisement in the local paper. So we have now that advertisement with proof of advertisement and payment. And open for hearing again. I have Mr. Richard available by phone if there's any concerns from the public, because we had already heard the matter. It's just basically a paperwork and a hearing issue.
Right.
So he can be available by phone to answer any questions if there are any questions.
So this was the combination of Price Chopper and Tops combining as a corporation?
I believe so. It had a change of manager, change of officers, change of ownership interest, and a transference of stock.
Yep.
So with those multiple amendments, one of the issues was missed, so we did do the advertisement.
Okay, so the advertisement's been taken care of.
Yep. And this is the
we already approved the change of managers and company combination.
Anybody here?
Yeah, I'm going to ask, is anybody here would like to speak on behalf or against the Price Chopper Tops management combination? No? Good. All right, we're good. We already approved the
Yep.
name and everything. So
We just had to have the opportunity to
Yep.
have a public hearing.
Okay. All right, so check that off. Let's see. Next is the American Legion discussion. Lieutenant Maroney, if you want to quickly go over the issue at hand, that was from February, I believe, February 18th.
Yep, February 18th of this year. There was a hit and run accident that occurred out in front of American Legion on the Pearl Street side. It ended up being a person who apparently works at the American Legion. The bartender had left, 7 years later, arrested for OUI, backed out into another vehicle in oncoming traffic. And speaking with the bartender that was on that night, told us there was no video and the video did not work. Later also found that the individual that was involved in the accident also shares a residence with the bartender that was on that night as well. Said the person wasn't there. Sergeant Arsenal was one of the investigators in that accident. He later wrote and obtained a search warrant for the video footage from Gardner District Court. When he went there, he was confronted with the same bartender, said he didn't know how to work the cameras. Eventually they got somebody in there that was able to get the cameras and to get the video footage showing the accident, showing the person leaving the Legion, getting the accident, and going back into the Legion home. Even though they said they did not go in and that they had left a while ago. And I think as far as, I think it states the line of reality that happened on the premise. And we just wanted to speak with the owners or whoever's in charge of the bar to ensure that when bartenders, if they are on shift, because we don't even know if she's on shift or not, they're not consuming alcohol when they're working, and if somebody's under the influence, that bartenders are paying attention to that, to not allow them to leave and call us if we need to escort them home and make sure they don't get behind the vehicle.
Okay, I don't want to. Is there a representative here from the American Legion? Could you just come up and state your name real quickly?
Yeah.
You can have a seat too.
Joel Thompson, the bar manager, and also the junior vice command.
Okay.
I was the one that got the old time computer that works where you can take the videos, because we don't have a disk drive that works.
Okay.
The bartender thought that it was password protected. It isn't. So he called me and I'm up there. I was working that day at my afterwards.
And it shows here that the video was reviewed by the Gardner Police Department.
Yes, and we obtained a copy of the video. We had to use a cell phone camera to videotape off the camera because they didn't have means to.
Yeah, it's an old system, like very, very old system, and it had a CD-ROM drive on it that doesn't work anymore. So to upgrade the system would cost us a fortune. So he says you got the best cameras in town, the sergeant did, so I guess that's something.
Yeah, the video player was good.
Yeah, he said
Yeah.
they're better than Walmart, and that's what he told me. So.
Is there, so just reading the report and going through the notice of violation, is there anything that the Gardner Police Department is recommending, or is this a?
She was not working that night, but I
She
saw her early in the evening.
Okay.
She was talking with some friends that I told the sergeant this, that somebody hung themselves in Athol, which is another thing. Her brother committed suicide too, so I think that might have been part of this review, but I can't improve what I left.
So crystal clear as far as instructing all the bartenders and employees there that they have to do whatever they need to do, whatever Gardner PD needs at that time.
I have no issue with that whatsoever, trust me. Whatsoever.
Just so that they understand it too, you know what I mean?
I'll all be brief.
Be chasing their tails here.
I'll be brief.
Yeah, just
Nothing
try to
else.
make it as seamless.
If nothing else, call me and I'll give them a ride, you know? Which I've done a few times.
Lieutenant Maroney, there was nothing here, it stated here that Gardner PD is not asking to move forward with it.
Correct. Yeah. We just wanted to have a conversation to ensure, that your bartenders are, up to date, knowing what equipment works, what equipment doesn't work, because the bartender that night was that's why the sergeant ended up running a search warrant.
And he was right in doing that. Again, he did not know that it was not password protected.
Okay.
And I got a call and showed up and took care of whatever he needed that night.
Yeah, it looks like it's expedited.
No
pretty
issues.
quickly.
Yeah.
No issues.
Okay.
Really, you know.
Yeah.
That's what you gotta do. I said, don't get it. You just gotta get hold of the right person is what's going on, that's all. I mean, that equipment is probably almost as old as I am. Can't be that old.
All right, would anybody else like to speak on behalf of this? All right. Any questions, comments, concerns? Nancy?
Well, I mean, we have concerns, which is why the gentleman is here.
Obviously.
All right, so I would just make sure that, like you said, the bartenders understand, fully comply with the Gardner Police Department. I know that was rectified pretty quickly, seeing that they had a password issue. Have meetings with your bartenders if you haven't already.
Yeah. I don't have that many bartenders anymore, so it makes it easy.
Okay. All
What
right.
would you say?
I don't have that many bartenders anymore, so
Oh.
it makes it easy. Because business has been horrible, so.
And, you know, let them know that if there's somebody there that's needs to be, and they're trying to get to their car and they're trying to stop them, they can call us. We're not, you're not gonna get jammed up for that. We encourage that.
Okay,
Like, we
thank you.
don't want them to get behind the wheel. That's
I
our
agree.
biggest thing.
Thank
So
you
if
very
you need
much.
assistance with that, let them know, like, don't hesitate on calling us.
Okay. I will stress that fact.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, guys.
All right, no problem. We'll just add this to the file and you're all set.
All right, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good
You too. Have a good week. Let's see. Now we get into old business, the South Gardner Hotel alcohol license type mismatch update. Where do we stand on that?
I emailed the establishment's attorney, have not had any response, no paperwork, no reply. They've done none of the changes that we asked them to do. They were also sent a certified letter. I can pull out that.
No response at all?
No response at
emails,
all.
no phone calls back, nothing?
No phone call back. Mr. Johnson, the establishment manager, owner, came into the health department on another issue, and I asked him to update me, and he said just call my attorney, and I called his attorney did not return my phone call. So I emailed him.
When did you do that?
So my email was on May 24th. Phone call would have been the day prior. The letter was on March 9th. Certified. So we're just getting no response from
So
them.
there's been no response since May 24th? Is that what-
May 24th was the email I sent to them, but the certified asking them to work on changing from a hotel license to a restaurant license went on
Right.
March 9th. And that's certified card.
Mr. Chair,
I was gonna say,
I may be able to shed some additional light on this. So,
sure, yeah. Attorney,
For those of you who don't know, John Flint, Assistant City Solicitor. So we've conducted some research into this issue, and it's a little interesting and has a bit of a historical aspect to it. Master Law Chapter 140 licenses both lodging houses and hotels. And through the history of that legislation, the term lodging house and hotel was used synonymously for a long period of time. In recent years, there has been a separation for the types of licenses to be obtained by those two different types of institutions that have put different requirements on those different types of institutions, yet they are still very, very similar, and there's a lot of intertwining of regulations governing lodging houses versus hotels. In order for a hotel to have a license, Chapter 138 is very specific. They have to be they have to hold a license pursuant to chapter 140, but it doesn't specify which section of chapter 140 they have to have a license pursuant to, and there's sections that govern just lodging houses, and there's sections that govern just hotels and inns. So it just says a 140 license. And what a 140 license does for a establishment holding a section 12 liquor license is it gives you, the local license commission, the ability to restrict or unrestrict the physical area of alcohol services within the establishment. So for instance, a hotel, you can license the entire premises, which would allow things like mini bars in the rooms, room service of alcohol from the bar to the room, patrons to take drinks from the bar to their room, etc., etc. Or you can limit the service of alcohol just to the restaurant area of the hotel. So that hotel license that South Gardner Hotel currently holds would allow you to either expand or restrict the physical premises of service within that establishment. I did reach out to the ABCC because it seems, given the fact that Chapter 138 specifically uses the language hotel or inn and does not specifically use the language of lodging house, it raised some questions for me, but also raised questions for me where a lodging house, in its purest sense, implies more of an apartment type situation where you have the freedom to come and go and bring in your own food, even though there's a shared kitchen and have that shared space, that allowing a lodging house to have a liquor license could lead to some level of mischief where a bar owner who also is within the lodging house could restrict the people who live in the lodging house portion of the premises from bringing in their own alcohol, force them to have to purchase alcohol through him, jack up the prices, and basically create a unhealthy situation from, but that concern does not seem to reside within the ABCC, and their position basically is that there's no prohibition on the lodging house from holding a liquor license. If they also have a common victual license. Right. So basically, looking at this whole situation historically, and based on the guidance that I received from the ABCC earlier this month, I would suggest that the hotel license that the South Gardner currently has is permissible, and it grants you as the commission the ability to appropriately restrict service of alcohol to just the restaurant area proper, allowing the residents who live within the lodging house itself, if they wanted to purchase and bring in their own alcohol, there would be no prohibition.
So it's set up basically as apartments up there, correct? I've never been physically.
Just rooms.
Yeah, it is rooms.
They
There are
are
licensed now as a
shared
lodging house.
Yeah.
They are licensed now.
They still have to go up there now? Good. You haven't been up there. I don't even know if it's.
Building Commissioner Jean was up there in October to do his annual inspection, and he said that they were completely sold out.
How many rooms are up there?
I believe it's 11.
And they share,
Share a kitchen, sorry, they don't even have a kitchen. They use the restaurant kitchen. They can bring their own food into the restaurant kitchen and have the cooks cook for them, but they're not allowed to actually cook in the kitchen. This is what I was told by, I believe, the building commissioner. And they have 2 shared bathrooms, which meets the Board of Health requirement.
2 shared bathrooms.
And as long as they're meeting the regulatory requirements for a lodging house, with having the cleaning service, the cleaning bathrooms, and a house manager available.
So
They're set up as a hotel, they're licensed as a hotel.
No, they're licensed as a lodging house.
So
Their Chapter 140 license is a lodging house license. Their Chapter 138 license is a hotel license. Now, all it says in Chapter 138, which is where you're concerned, for them to hold a hotel license is that they also hold a license under Chapter 140. But because there's different sections of Chapter 140 that give different types of licenses, it's unclear, well, it was unclear whether or not a lodging house license met that qualification. to have a Chapter 140 license. According to the ABCC, it does.
So they can hold 2 licenses, or they?
No,
we're just gonna keep- yeah,
They
we're fine with
can't
the
hold
one.
2 Chapter
We're
138
good with
licenses. This is a Chapter 140 license which licenses the living arrangements,
Okay.
or the transient arrangements, what have you. And then the Chapter 138 license is simply the alcohol service license. Their common vic license falls under Chapter 140 as well.
So, in your opinion, everything's,
Everything's fine.
Everything seems to be fine.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest that when their license comes up for renewal, take a look at the license and what you have licensed as the premises for allowable service. Because if you don't want them taking drinks from the bar up to the rooms,
Right.
you can restrict service to just the bar area, requiring them to put signs up, no alcohol beyond this point,
Okay.
which would be.
Can we just make a note of that, so when
Yeah.
we do, because license
That's what you
renewals,
tried to do in the first
that's what
Kind
you're
of,
trying,
yeah.
yeah, you were trying to do that, yeah.
Yeah, so I will get the language off of previous licenses and have you guys review it before we print it on the next.
Yeah, and
meeting.
that starts basically September, October is when we start doing
Yeah.
that.
It'll be no different than what you do with any other restaurant,
Right.
where it's, you can't, like the ale house with a deck,
Right, give us the layout of where you're actually serving the alcohol. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
that clarification. That'll work. Okay.
What is bothersome about this, though, is that no one's responded to the office.
Well, I think in the one of the responses I saw, which maybe I was the recipient of that only, it was basically, it's been like this for decades, we're not changing anything now. Attorney Paquette did not engage in any legal discourse with me regarding the issue, and if he had, perhaps this issue would have been resolved fairly quickly. But it then took it upon myself to dig into this a little bit deeper to see if there was anything went straight to the ABCC with it. So, yeah, I understand, but
I appreciate your clarification and your attention.
thank you.
Actually, we have another thing falls under new business, which is alcohol infused. So
Anybody bring samples?
we had, so this came up kind of quickly. We found out that during the food truck festival, there was a food truck that was selling infused ice cream, alcohol infused ice cream. And then later found out there was another food truck, correct, that had baked goods that had infused alcohol. My brain is spinning from reading all the ABCC rules about how much alcohol can be put into baked goods, being considered not to have a license or have a license. The problem is we don't know actually what the alcohol content is inside of these things that people are selling.
And I've been reading what the ABCC has put out, and this was actually part of a discussion I was involved in back in 2016 on the same issue, and pretty much led to the same. Nobody can give a good answer on this. The low alcohol content, I think that's where the 5% comes from, is that anything over 5% is considered alcohol and is regulated by Chapter 138. If it's below 5%, and if the TTB has designated it as a food product, it's outside the purview of Chapter 138. I'm still not 100% clear on the state's enforcement of that, because I've read anecdotally from colleagues who have said in their communities an investigator from the ABCC came in, explained the law to the business, and then the business shut down. But it was almost identical to what we're seeing here, and yet we're getting the TTB notices that say it's a food product, so the ABCC follow the ABCC guidance and it says this is outside of your purview.
Yeah.
So it's confusing. I absolutely agree with.
It's confusing because, especially, more with the food truck festival, because we approved a license for the Gardner Ale House, so there's a clearly defined area.
Well, it's also
where
clear that they're serving alcoholic beverages.
Correct, exactly.
which falls under the statute.
Right, exactly. So we had to, basically, the Board of Health had to shut that down from her serving that alcohol ice cream, just because we weren't sure of the alcohol content. And if we're having the Ale House basically have a designated area to serve alcohol and nobody can go outside a certain area, we had to do that because we had no definitive, number one, we didn't have, there was no approval by the commission for them to be able to serve alcohol. And us not knowing what the alcohol content, and there was way too many issues there for us to say, yes, go ahead and serve. Because again, you can walk around the whole food truck festival with boozy ice cream or lemonade or whatever it is that they're selling. So we need to understand in the future is that we need to know the alcohol content of what they're selling.
So one of the challenges was that we didn't know what the appropriate documentation was, which is the TTB classification, if I'm understanding that correctly.
They can submit their formulas, recipes, what have you, to the TTB for analysis, and the TTB will make the determination whether this is a food product or a beverage and subject to regulation. They will also determine what the alcohol content is based upon the recipe that's provided to them. Some people go out to an independent lab and get that done and get approved by the TTB. I looked at some of the approvals that the TTB provided and clearly said food product, which would make it exempt from Chapter 138. But then you have that caveat in the guidance that says, but they're also selling, if it's over 5%, then they're selling alcohol, and alcohol is regulated, even though it's alcohol in per se a solid form. I think the ABCC is going to have to take a look at this at some point in time because these products are becoming more and more prevalent. You just go into the grocery store now and you see boozy popsicles. What's next in the traveling ice cream truck that goes around town, selling these things.
Well, that's something they should have had to put in when they got their permit for the food truck festival, because they asked in that, what are you selling? Hamburgers, hot dogs.
Yeah, but if
they're doing ice cream with alcohol, that should be.
If the determination by the TTB is that it's a food product, they could say ice cream, it's a food product.
But then
We'd have to specify in the application, do any of your products contain alcohol?
Well, they advertise it as they were selling ice cream
Right.
with alcohol.
So-
And then they should be providing the TTB.
That's why the red flag came
Right.
up that Friday before the food festival, before the truck festival.
Yeah, so that's a question that I can add to all food permit applications if we would like to do so, and then it would trigger, if they answer yes to that question, it triggers required documentation
To
that they have to
themselves,
upload.
I think maybe that's.
So
Does that seem
I
reasonable?
think that's a very reasonable regulation that if any of their products contain alcohol, they would have to have a binder or something that is on their person, so to speak, with a collection of their TTB letters showing that the product is an exempt product. Otherwise, they would be prohibited from selling for failure to have that with them in the truck. So all they really should do is pull down the binder and hand it to the investigator who can look at it and say, okay, yep, everything you're selling here is exempt. Without that, I would say then they shouldn't be selling the products.
Okay, so I can make those two things.
Yeah, we just wanted clarification on that, because it came up.
It came up on Thursday evening,
Yeah.
the food truck festival was Saturday afternoon, and
How did it come up on
people.
Thursday evening?
It was advertised.
It was advertised.
Oh,
Social media, and Lauren Saunders with Board of Health, and Angela red flagged it, called me and said, what are we doing here? We're selling alcohol in a food truck. And I
okay.
said, well, time out, we only approved one license,
Mhm.
which was Moon Hill Brewery.
Mhm.
We didn't approve a food truck selling food and alcohol-induced food. So we had no time to react, and Lauren actually took care of it on her end from the Board
Lauren
of Health,
and
from the
Rick
Board-
Rossi.
and Rick from the Board of Health side and from the Gardner PD side. And just said you cannot sell that product, you can sell everything else, but you can't sell that product until we can figure out exactly the alcohol content in it. And also, in the future, we have to get this straightened out, because it's not straightened out.
No, it's not.
So-
I mean, that,
And the other concern is if it is above that 5%, and it is an ice cream truck, and they are driving around selling alcohol, they're selling it on the road, they're selling it in neighborhoods, they're selling it, I mean,
are they
You can go on and
certified,
on
do
and
they
on.
have liquor liability insurance?
Right.
Do they have proper signage? Those-
Well, as long as its food product is under the 5%.
right,
Right.
exactly, we don't know that.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that the mobile bar is
Mhm.
coming. It's coming, there's a local business that's starting one.
Yeah.
And they will be looking to do licensing through, using a catering license,
Okay.
to take a bar to like family parties, weddings, and things like that.
Oh, right, yeah, I can
Now,
see
it'll be
that.
a mobile bar,
I can see
food
that.
truck bar.
But it'll be going from point A to point B, it won't be.
I don't think we're going down the street bringing it
Handing out shots or whatever, you know, it's.
So I would assume, just like with any other alcohol, one-day alcohol license, that these mobile establishments would probably need to have one day for inspection.
Catering.
Yeah,
Right,
Catering
as-
license, a
right.
catering license is what they'd be
Yeah.
going for.
yeah, that's section 14,
Yeah.
get approved,
Yeah.
get a license.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good to know. All right, so yeah, see that coming in the future. One thing I just didn't want to overlook was the Ola case post 905, BFW change of manager, came back as a return no action. Is there anybody here representing Ola case 905?
That's been taken care of, however.
No, still.
I went there and hand delivered it and talked to the gentleman and told him, you need to contact what else to get this squared away, and he said, you got it.
And they came in the very next day and asked me for clarification of what they needed. I told them everything that I believe they needed, including the email directly from the ABCC that told them what they needed to do. And I have not heard back from them since. I did make a phone call that afternoon, actually, because the gentleman left his reading glasses on the front counter of the health department, and I wanted to make sure to get them back their prescription. So I have not been able to contact them since, and that was the same challenge that I had initially with getting them a letter. There's no response, there's no answering machine at the,
Do they have an hours of operation there that they?
No, I think I got lucky when I went down there, one of the guys was outside having a cigarette, and they weren't open. The other two gentlemen were in the office talking, and that's where he brought me.
I'm just saying we'll try to give it one more shot, and try to get communication out of them. And from there, we'll just
So
have.
down there again tomorrow,
Huh?
I'm going down there.
Yeah, I would
Give
say.
a notice that somebody has to be here for the next meeting.
do you want to make them come in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll type the letter.
Try tomorrow if you can.
Yep, soon as she.
And then if not, we'll put them in. I would say put the notice on the next meeting anyway, so hopefully they can just get this rectified as soon as possible, because they gotta straighten it out. Otherwise, the ABCC is not gonna, they're not gonna approve their license.
Yeah, renewals are coming, if they have the wrong manager listed. they
Exactly,
are
they're gonna kick it back and they're not gonna have a
Right.
license to serve.
There was one other item that was not on the agenda that I just wanted to ask for a little bit of direction with. I got a notice from the city clerk that there was a last drink data report that came to the city clerk's office. These go back to July of last year, and they were just forwarded to the city clerk in June of this year. From that, we only had actually one establishment that came up as a last drink serving restaurant in the arrest case, which was, I won't write the name of it, but I don't know if we do anything with this, or is this just for data purposes?
It's for data purposes and file. I mean, we've requested in the past, like Jen used to supply it to us,
Okay.
just to kind of review.
Okay. And I can
But
forward those
usually we
reports
just-
to you, but they just all came in a cluster of there's 11 of them, I believe. I
Yeah.
did forward it to Nick.
They were probably behind and they just
Um,
threw everything out there.
Yeah, I think, yeah, or they were giving it to a wrong email address and they finally figured out that they were getting bounced back, so. Just wanted to bring that to your attention, just so I have a better direction on what we're doing in the
Okay.
future.
Yeah, we can use that as a reference in the future if something comes up or there's an issue with an establishment or anything like that, we can follow through on that.
Okay, I'll forward that to you tomorrow.
So another thing in new business, Attorney Flick, this is what, I just wanted to have just kind of an open discussion regarding the South Gardner Hotel appeal process. Not necessarily just the appeal process, but just the overall aspect of us as a commission. Kind of checkpoints and boxes, things we need to do, not just the commission, but Gardner PD as far as kind of enforcing a violation or also attending a hearing, an appeal hearing, something like what happened at the South Gardner Hotel. Are there other steps that we need to take as far as evidence-wise, protocols, things like that, that we're kind of missing? We just want to make sure that we're on the same page, that we're kind of doing our due diligence to make sure that going forward, if we do hand out a violation and it's appealed, and we feel like we have substantial evidence that there was an issue with it and there was a significant violation, can we just, as a commission, can we still push forward with that appeal? I know we come to you for guidance and such.
Well, I mean, ultimately, the law department is going to be the entity that's going to be handling that appeal once it goes up to the ABCC or even beyond. And I always, I talk to all of my clients, when we're dealing with a situation, whatever you can do ahead of time to follow proper protocols and make sure that you have a good paper trail and evidence, makes our job so much easier than when we go forward to defend the decision that's being made. Ultimately, when you're talking about violations under Chapter 138, it does come down to, it's very, very fact specific. So whether that violation is a physical altercation that occurred at the bar that was just out of control, or that there's been too many of these types of incidents, or overservice. Overservice has a very sort of specific evidentiary criteria that would be looked at by the ABCC and beyond, and rightfully so. And specifically that criteria, the question that should be asked is, what knowledge did the person serving the alcohol have regarding the individual's state of intoxication or lack thereof? What evidence did that person serving have that this person was already intoxicated? Not that they would become intoxicated as a result of the drink, but that they are intoxicated at the time of the overservice, because that is the very definition of overservice. You're serving a person who is already exhibiting signs of intoxication. Is this individual slurring speech? Are they not able to sit up straight? Are they falling over? Are they stumbling prior to the service of alcohol? Or are they engaging in the very kind of conversation we're having here? They're not exhibiting any signs. They have that last drink and then they're intoxicated. If the service caused the intoxication, that's not overservice. If the person was intoxicated and then served, that's overservice. And the law is very clear on that. So it's a matter of reviewing the evidence that you have at the time, which in most cases is going to be the video, which is somewhat inconclusive in and of itself, but at the same time you can pick up a tremendous amount of information from that. And I also encourage the other questions that come into play are how long was the individual at the place that was the establishment where they serve food, other inquiries such as that. In the recent case with South Gardner Hotel, the request for the video was only from 11 o'clock p.m. until 1:30 a.m.
That was what was provided, that was not what was requested. We
That
requested
was on
from
the
11
request.
a.m.
No, that was on the written request from the TV. It was 11 p.m. I looked at that.
She was there by 8.
It was actually, they were looking for the times from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m.
That was a request that I did.
And then they provided that,
2 hours.
Yeah, the 2-hour window.
yeah.
I believe what I had is when mine said 11 p.m. But even so, in that.
Oh, that's the one, I sorry. That was the Legion one.
Okay.
It did have a different title on it.
It
The,
did, well, it was slightly unclear because it looked like it had been written over.
In that case, there was no question that she was exhibiting signs of intoxication after that last drink. No question. Within about 10 minutes. And then she actually left at 11:30, around 11:25. She came back 5 minutes later, and there was another 15 minutes of her on the video. She picked up a random drink off the bar and drank it, but she wasn't served it.
Okay, so that was the, in your opinion, that was the evidence right there that it wouldn't have been,
So you don't feel she was intoxicated before she picked up
Well,
that last
the
drink?
bartender didn't serve.
No, she wasn't served.
She wasn't served, she wasn't
That's what
served.
I'm asking.
Yeah.
You don't think she was intoxicated before?
Oh, I think she was,
Oh,
but she wasn't served that drink, so there was no over service. It was, she just randomly picked up a glass that was on the bar, and there were people there, so it was somebody else's drink that she just picked up behind their back and drank. Possibly, I don't know the exact context.
here's my issue. This is my real issue with this whole thing. Number one, it took months and months for you to look at it. Number two, what if somebody got killed in that accident? What if there was a person that got broadsided down the road? I mean,
When the law hasn't changed.
do we need to not give any type of suspension to anybody? Because that's what we would do. How do we know when somebody is actually having that service of that last drink, that they're intoxicated at that time?
It's understanding what the signs are of intoxication.
You know how I measure it? Look what I drink. I couldn't have drank everything she drank and not been blitzed.
I understand that, and everybody needs to have, one, you have to bring in a, medical expert to look at her entire, body chemistry and everything, and that's, those types of things. So what the law looks at is outward physical signs of intoxication. Was she slurring her speech? Was she unsteady on her feet? Was she not able to sit up straight? When you take those very basic aspects of intoxication and you watch that video, you cannot conclude. We could not put anybody on the stand who said she was exhibiting signs of intoxication based upon this video. There's no way to make that conclusion based upon that video. After she was served, yes, absolutely you can do that. Absolutely you can do that. And this matter was continued numerous times because of Attorney Paquette, not because of anything we were doing to delay the case. So
I didn't think we would delay it.
No.
But
we
I was wondering why the continuances continued, especially because the week before the hearing, the final hearing, that was supposed to happen, you sent a letter saying, asking to
You received no
have
feedback.
the appeal dismissed.
Well, right, but the commission didn't dismiss the appeal because the cat, they allowed it to go forward. They weren't going to.
The ABCC.
I was, in open meeting, I was kind of posturing for Attorney Paquette because he was waiting for the last minute to do everything. He was being chastised by the ABCC, so I filed a motion to dismiss the appeal. The ABCC just never ruled on that motion. So, we continued to move ahead because of the fact that now it's coming, it's going to happen. We're going to move forward and prepare for the matter. But we have to. I want to be very careful and protect both the commission and the officers who enforce the law. And we, in looking at that matter, yes, was she intoxicated when she left for Soho? There's no question she was intoxicated. And there wasn't a 20-minute delay between her leaving and the time of the accident occurring. It was about 5 minutes. sober when the time the accident occurred. The issue was, she was never served when she was showing signs of intoxication. So there was no over-service, and there's no question in my mind that the ABCC would have looked at that and said no violation.
If we received a video and she was drinking or started drinking around 5:30 and drank till 11:30, would that have been a reasonable cause for her to be?
Again, what signs of intoxication was she showing? So, she took an hour to drink a beer. And the shots that she had it was clearly a combination of alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages that she was taking in shots. Because it was like every other glass was poured with a plastic container, and alcohol cannot be stored in a plastic container. That was either pickle juice or grape or what have you. It was some sort of juice, it wasn't alcohol, with the shots in between. So it was not the number of shots that was indicated. I spent a good 3 to 4 hours watching this video over and over again, counting it. I think my counts were pretty good. But it's again, it's because everybody's metabolism is different, and I hear what you're saying about if I had that much in a short period of time, then I'd be able to get behind the wheel and drive it. Would I be showing the signs of intoxication? Probably, because I don't drink that much, but everybody's different. And what signs of intoxication is the patron showing when they're served by the person serving the alcohol?
We shouldn't be, for anybody that does that, leaves a bar or a restaurant and gets in an accident, gets stopped. We can't do anything.
The after result,
We can't do anything to the owner.
Well.
So what you're saying is we
No,
really
not
shouldn't be
necessarily.
handing down any,
No.
watch
the videos. Watch the videos. I'm familiar with what the signs are of intoxication. Watch the videos and say, look at right here, this person, she can't stand up straight. And here you are serving her a final drink.
But I think what you're saying is that they didn't serve her that last drink, she
Right.
picked it up off
She
the
picked
bar.
it up.
So they didn't serve her because she was drinking somebody
She was
else's
not,
drink.
she was not exhibiting signs of intoxication at the time she was served her last shot. Those last shots. Now, was she intoxicated afterwards? No question on why she was intoxicated afterwards. I think the accident proves it.
But there's no proof in the tape that it was the bartender that served her, it was that she
Correct.
picked a drink up off the bar, somebody
After
else.
somebody turned their back. So it wasn't served to her.
Right.
So it's a matter of scrutinizing the evidence, looking at the evidence with a careful eye, understanding what the signs are of intoxication, relying on your public safety experts to do that analysis in large part for you and ask those questions. And if you're an officer, what signs of intoxication was the patron showing at the time she was served, or he was served, what have you. That's the question that's going to be asked by the ABCC. Based upon the evidence you presented, what signs of intoxication was the patron showing at the time of service? Not after, but at the time of service. And so that's every type of violation is going to have its own particular inquiry. So if there's repeated occurrences of bar fights, what steps has the bar taken to ensure that patrons who are engaging in aggressive behavior with each other are not being served or being removed promptly, so that you don't end up with a service and physical altercation issue down the road. Is the bar taking appropriate steps to have security personnel who are watching for these types of things? Service of underage, properly checking licenses. Even with patrons who are known to them, they should be, by law in Massachusetts, if you don't have a license in a bar, they can't serve you. Even if you're under the age of 50, if you don't have your license with you, legally they're not supposed to serve you without you having a license. And if an investigator from the ABCC came in and said, I don't see your license, so I forgot it, and you're sitting there with a beer in your hand, that established it, be on the hook. The BCC can bring them up on that violation. So, you know, it's just understanding what the alleged violation was, and what evidentiary standards do you need to establish in order to move forward on supporting any determination to suspend or otherwise discipline, impose disciplinary action on the license holder.
And else.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for the clarification.
My pleasure.
Nick, did you have any other questions or anything else? Gary? No.
Can I ask you a quick question? When we're going through something like that, as we did with this other when one of us on the commission is contacted privately, is that, you know, it's inappropriate, is it unethical, is it illegal?
By the establishment?
By somebody?
It depends on the contact. If it's legal counsel, the immediate response should be the city's has a law department. You need to contact and discuss these issues through the law department. Under the rules of ethics in Massachusetts, if you know a person or individual or entity that's represented by legal counsel in a matter that you're inquiring about, you are not allowed to talk directly to that entity or individuals from that entity. That's a violation of the rules of ethics.
I guess my inquiry is more toward, if somebody has a question, is it inappropriate to contact one member alone, or if there's a question for commission business, should that only be brought up through the proper channel?
Yes, I would say yes, it has to be brought through the commission, and any questions regarding protocol or procedure or commission questions should be directed to the commission directly. So, you know, contact Angela, who can pass the question or comment on to the commission, which should properly be dealt with in an open meeting.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And
So-
if it's something that wants that, you know, in consultation with the chair, wants to have legal involved with the question or responding to the question ahead of time, pass it on to legal. We'll take a look at it and provide whatever assistance we can to the commission in making its decision or addressing the issue.
Okay, so the proper response is go away?
Well, number of the board of health.
Thanks, Ken. Go see Brandy.
Randy will be taking over.
Not on camera, right?
All right. Any other new business or questions or comments or concerns for Attorney Glick or anyone else?
I appreciate you coming.
Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. All right. No other business, no other comments? Anything from the audience? Anything?
Oh, I was looking for information on the price chopper thing. I got one question answered. Well, the other half is, do you have any other information on that?
As far as ownership or anything like that, or who managers are, et cetera, that is information that we can get right at it's public knowledge right at the Board of Health. So you can get that right there, right from Angela and Brady.
You're presenting it the way.
And it's probably on, you can get it online.
It's a 115-page report.
She's got the 115
115 pages. I can make a copy if you'd like to come down to the health department during our business hours tomorrow or any day. And I'll make a copy for you.
All right.
Adjourn?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Meeting is adjourned. 5:24. Angela, can I fill this out and give it to you in time?
Yes, you can.